He may never say it out loud, but the truth is, men want more than they'll ever ask for. Behind the strength, the calm, the quiet confidence, there's a world of needs, desires, and emotions he's been taught to hide. And if you learn to hear what he doesn't say, you'll discover a side of him only 1% of women ever get to see. The side that loves hardest when he finally feels understood. Men live in a world that constantly tells them to be strong, stoic, and unshakable, so they rarely find spaces where they feel genuinely safe to open up emotionally. From a young age, they're taught that showing emotion makes them weak, soft, or unreliable. And so over time, many men learn to bottle things up, suppress their pain, and present a version of themselves that seems unfazed, even when they're silently breaking inside. What most people don't see is that underneath that composed exterior is someone who quietly wishes for a safe space to land, a place where he doesn't have to perform strength all the time. He deeply wants to feel that he can share his fears, his sadness, and his confusion without being judged, mocked, or misunderstood. But he won't ask for this. He won't say, I need you to be the one person who doesn't see me as a problem when I'm not okay. He'll just retreat when he senses he can't trust the emotional environment around him. When a man finds someone who listens with empathy instead of impatience, who doesn't minimize his feelings or throw his vulnerability back at him in future arguments, it's like discovering air after holding his breath for too long. He's not looking for someone to fix him. He's simply looking for someone who will hold space for him, someone who can hear him out without making him feel like less of a man for needing to talk. It's easy to miss these silent requests because they come wrapped in silence, in long pauses, in quiet withdrawals, and in moments when he doesn't know how to verbalize what's weighing on his heart. What he wants more than anything is emotional safety. Not the kind where everything is always calm, but the kind where he knows he can bring the mess, the doubt, and the vulnerability without it being used against him. That emotional safety becomes the foundation of trust, and when he feels it, he starts to show up more deeply, love more openly, and stay more consistently, because he finally feels like he's not just accepted for his strength, but loved even in his softness. Men may appear confident and self-sufficient on the surface, but deep down, they crave to be genuinely appreciated, not just for what they do, but for who they are. While praise for their achievements or efforts might be common, what they truly long for is authentic appreciation that goes beyond surface-level compliments. They want to feel like someone sees their heart, understands their intentions, and values their presence, even when they're not performing or producing. It's not about saying thank you when they pay the bills or good job when they fix something. It's about recognizing the quiet ways they try to protect, support, and show up, even when they're struggling silently. Men are often conditioned to prove their worth through action, which makes them constantly question whether they're enough. So when a woman notices the small, consistent things, a worried glance, a gentle gesture, an unspoken sacrifice, and makes him feel like those things matter, it hits deeper than any dramatic declaration of love. That kind of appreciation creates emotional oxygen. It gives him the strength to keep going, especially on days when he feels invisible or misunderstood. He won't ask for this because it sounds too needy, and that's the last thing he wants to be perceived as. But when he feels it, when he sees that his efforts are not just noticed but deeply valued, something shifts inside him. He starts to trust more, to give more, and to open parts of himself that would have otherwise stayed hidden. Real appreciation tells a man, I see you, not just, I see what you do for me. And that distinction is everything. It's in the moments when she looks at him and says, you didn't have to do that, but I know why you did, and I love you for it. Or when she catches a side of him that he didn't think anyone noticed and treats it with care. This kind of appreciation isn't loud, but it's powerful. It doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's in the way she touches his hand when he's quiet, or the way she remembers the things he never thought were important. That silent gratitude speaks louder than praise ever could. Men rarely say, "I want to be seen," but the truth is, they're aching for that recognition. Not the kind that boosts ego, but the kind that touches the soul. When a man feels truly appreciated for his character, not just his contributions, it grounds him. It makes him feel secure, valued, and deeply connected. And in that space, he starts to give even more, not because he's expected to, but because he's finally being loved in a way that speaks his silent language. Physical affection holds a deeper meaning for men than most people realize, but it's often misunderstood or reduced to intimacy alone. What men really desire, though they rarely voice it, is affection that isn't tied to performance or expectations. They want to feel wanted in a way that isn't transactional, a touch that doesn't lead somewhere or come with pressure, but instead simply affirms their presence. A gentle hand on the shoulder, a spontaneous hug from behind, resting a head on his chest. These small gestures carry a powerful message that says, "You matter to me even when you're not doing anything." Most men are taught that physical affection is only allowed or acceptable within the context of sex. So they often feel starved for nurturing touch without realizing how much they miss it. They long for it, but they don't ask, partly because they don't want to seem weak, and partly because they've been conditioned to think it's not something they're supposed to need. But that craving never leaves. It sits quietly beneath the surface, showing up in moments where they feel distant, unspoken, or disconnected. When a woman offers physical closeness without an agenda, it gives a man something few experiences can. It calms his nervous system, centers his emotions, and allows him to feel safe in his body. In those moments, he doesn't have to earn love. He just gets to receive it. The absence of expectation allows him to fully enjoy the connection without the weight of performance. And when that affection comes at random times, not just when he's being romantic or successful, it tells him he's loved for who he is, not just for what he can do. Most men don't grow up being hugged often, kissed on the forehead, or held just for comfort, so they silently yearn for those moments in adulthood. When someone gives that to them freely, with no strings attached, it starts to heal wounds they never knew they had. It reassures them in a language they don't speak often, but always understand. They start to lean in more, not just physically, but emotionally too, because they feel accepted in their simplest, most unguarded form. It's not the grand gestures that stay with them. It's the way she touches his hand during a hard moment, or wraps her arms around him for no reason other than to say, "I'm here." That kind of affection builds trust, deepens intimacy, and creates a bond that goes far beyond words. And though he may never say it aloud, he'll remember how it felt, how it softened the hard parts of his day, how it made him feel less alone in the world. Men might not ask for it, but when they receive physical affection that feels safe, warm, and unconditional, it becomes one of the most powerful ways they feel love, without ever needing to explain why. Men often move through life carrying silent battles, moments of doubt and deep fears they rarely put into words, not because they don't feel them, but because they've been taught that speaking them makes them appear weak or uncertain. While many people see men as self-assured and confident, the truth is that men often go through intense periods of self-doubt, questioning their worth, their direction, and whether they're enough, especially in a world that constantly demands results and success. During these low points, what they truly long for, but rarely ever ask for, is the quiet, steady support of someone who believes in them, even when they're struggling to believe in themselves. It's not loud cheerleading they're after. It's the kind of grounded reassurance that doesn't try to fix them, doesn't judge them, and doesn't treat their uncertainty like a problem. A man in self-doubt won't always show his struggle clearly. He might go silent, become distant, or bury himself in work or distractions. What he hopes, deep down, is that someone will stay present through that emotional fog, not pressuring him to open up before he's ready, but simply letting him know she's there, steady, and unshaken by his temporary inner storm. That kind of presence is rare, and it creates a kind of trust that few words can build. A woman who doesn't flinch at his lowest moments becomes unforgettable to him. Because in a world where he often feels he must perform to be accepted, she becomes the place where he can simply be. She sees the man behind the armor, and her quiet confidence in him often becomes the very thing that helps him rise again. He may not say it aloud, but in his heart, he's listening for someone who doesn't need him to be perfect, but still chooses to stand beside him when he's far from it. That kind of faith restores his strength in ways that compliments never could. And when he comes out the other side of that doubt, he doesn't forget who stayed, who didn't get scared off by his silence or mistake his struggle for disinterest. He remembers the woman who looked him in the eyes and made him feel like he was still worthy, even when he didn't feel like much. That silent, unconditional support is something he'll never ask for directly, but when he experiences it, it becomes etched into the way he views love, trust, and partnership. It's not about being his savior or therapist, it's about being the kind of steady presence that reminds him of his strength when he's temporarily lost sight of it. In those quiet, pivotal moments, she becomes not just someone he loves, but someone he trusts with the most unspoken parts of himself. Men, despite often being seen as emotionally distant or reserved, deeply value their need for space, though they rarely articulate it out loud because they fear being misunderstood or accused of pulling away. This space isn't about avoiding their partner, losing interest, or disconnecting emotionally. Rather, it's about recalibrating their inner world, regaining clarity, and processing emotions that they don't always know how to put into words. For many men, silence and solitude are tools they use to sort through their thoughts, reflect on their goals, and regain a sense of self in a world that constantly demands action, problem solving, and composure. The challenge is that when a man takes this kind of space, his partner may start to feel rejected, confused, or even punished, especially if she interprets his silence as emotional withdrawal or disinterest. This misunderstanding can create unnecessary conflict and tension, because while she may crave connection in moments of emotional uncertainty, he often craves distance to find peace and regain his footing. The truth is, he's not trying to create distance between them, he's trying to find himself again, so he can come back fully present and grounded. What he truly wants, but doesn't know how to ask for, is space without guilt. He longs for a partner who trusts that his silence doesn't mean he's slipping away, but rather that he's stepping back to breathe, to think, to feel, and to return even more connected than before. A woman who doesn't panic during these pauses, who doesn't try to force him to talk before he's ready, and who doesn't take his need for solitude personally, becomes incredibly important to him. She becomes the rare presence in his life who understands the rhythm of his inner world, who can give him freedom without fearing abandonment, and who recognizes that his silence isn't an attack, it's a form of self-care. Men are often taught that they should always be present, always be providers, always be available to fix or respond. So when they finally need a moment for themselves, they carry guilt with it, worried that they're letting someone down. But when they're given the freedom to take that space without added pressure or emotional consequence, It creates a sense of safety that is incredibly rare. It allows them to reconnect with themselves and return more loving, more open, and more able to give fully. And what often goes unspoken is that in those moments of solitude, they're still thinking about the woman they love. They're not disappearing, they're resetting, they're navigating their own internal storms in the only way they've been taught, quietly and alone. But the difference is immense when they know they're not being judged for it, when they don't have to explain or justify their silence, and when they feel trusted enough to go inward and then return without tension waiting on the other side. That kind of space, when given without resentment, feels like emotional oxygen, and a man who experiences that kind of respect and understanding feels seen in a way he didn't even know he needed. It doesn't make him pull away, it makes him want to come closer, to open up more, and to stay, not because he's being asked to, but because he chooses to, again and again. Men, even in the most committed and stable relationships, carry a quiet desire that often goes unspoken. The need to feel chosen, not just once at the beginning, but again and again as the relationship unfolds. In the early stages of dating, there's an obvious excitement, a hunger to win each other over, to impress, to pursue, to show up fully and consistently. But as time goes on and comfort sets in, that energy can fade, and men, just like women, can begin to wonder if they are still desired, still admired, still the one their partner would choose today, not just the one she chose back then. The world expects men to always play the pursuer, to constantly show up with strength and certainty, to never question their place in a relationship. But the truth is, most men feel insecure in ways they'd never had the language to express. They may never ask directly, "Do you still want me the way you used to?" But that question lives quietly in their actions, in the way they notice your reactions, in the way they search your eyes for approval or desire when they walk in the room. Men long to feel wanted, not just needed. There's a difference, and they feel it. Being needed can feel like a responsibility, like they're simply filling a role, provider, protector, partner. But being wanted feels like a choice, a pull, a spark that reminds them that their presence matters beyond what they do. That feeling of being chosen tells a man that he's still interesting, still exciting, still the one who lights her up. It tells him that despite the years, the challenges, or the routine, he hasn't become invisible. He hasn't just become part of the furniture, and while he may never say it out loud, he notices the little things that show it. The way she looks at him when he's talking, the way she reaches for him in passing, the way she initiates closeness, not out of duty, but out of desire. Those moments, as small as they seem, speak volumes. They answer the unasked question, "Would you choose me again if you had the chance?" And when the answer is clearly yes, it melts away doubts he didn't even know he had. Men don't expect fireworks every day, but they crave those flickers of romantic recognition, the signs that they still hold a special place in your heart, not just out of habit, but out of intention. They want to feel that they are more than just your partner. They want to feel like your person, the one you still daydream about, still admire, still reach for, not because you have to, but because you genuinely want to. It's not about grand gestures or constant affirmations, but about those meaningful, spontaneous moments that say, "I still see you, I still want you, I'd still choose you." And when a man feels that, truly feels that, he becomes more emotionally generous, more open, more devoted, because he knows he is not just loved, but actively desired. But he no longer feels like he's fulfilling a role. He feels like he's living in a story that still excites both of you, a connection that hasn't faded with time, but has evolved with depth. That sense of being chosen day after day turns a relationship from something functional into something magnetic, something that continuously pulls him back, not because he's obligated, but because he's inspired. At the heart of every man lies a quiet world of unspoken needs, hidden beneath layers of strength, pride, and conditioning that have taught him to keep his desires tucked away. He won't always tell you he wants to be held without expectations, appreciated without prompting, supported without judgment, or chosen without question. But he feels those longings deeply. What he craves isn't perfection, but presence. He's not searching for someone to fix him, complete him, or read his mind. He's hoping to be loved in the moments when he doesn't know how to ask for it. When a woman can see through the silence and meet him there, with softness instead of suspicion, with trust instead of tension, and with love instead of conditions, she doesn't just win his heart, she earns his loyalty, his vulnerability, and a version of him no one else will ever know. Because in the end, it's not the grand gestures that make him stay, it's the quiet understanding, the emotional safety, and the feeling that even when he says nothing at all, she still hears him completely.